Guilty Gear Strive Season 4 is finally here, and it comes with a metric load of changes to every single character. This is going to be a long one, so let's go over some system changes first. Biggest of all is obviously the release of Queen Dizzy into the roster. I won't drag on about her, but she's a zoner with an ice mechanic, good looking buttons, and a terrifying win con that works on hit or block, so look out for her in the tower. There are various bug fixes for Dust, RC, Wall Stick, and single hit attack limit. Additionally, there are cast-wide adjustments to both 6P and defense that will impact the game significantly. Defense across the board is increased, meaning characters will on average live longer. Alongside this, certain big moves have had their damage increased to keep big hits feeling consequential. Because this change is universal, I won't be mentioning it for any character, but there are some significant shifts to the effective HP of each character. So here's a comparison of EHP last patch to this patch. Big things to notice are that Bedman went way up in the ranks, Happy Chaos went way down, and Millia is now the lowest health character in the game instead of Chipp. Similarly, 6P has been standardized across the cast to have identical recovery. The patch notes are a little unclear as to what the new number is, but big winners of this should be Anji, Pot, and Goldlewis, whereas big losers are Ram, Nago, and Testament. I also won't be bringing this up with each character. Starting with the character changes, Sol receives another huge rework to his combo structure, and emphasizes his clean hit mechanic with multiple new clean hits added to his toolkit. In return, his long-range tools have been made a little weaker. Sol 6P gets the universal changes, but it also no longer launches on grounded counter hit. Sol's 5K continues the cycle of past Guilty Gear and is now nerfed to 5-frame startup. It's also received reduced knockback and a bigger hitbox and hurtbox. These hitbox and hurtbox changes are also seen on the second hit of 5K, but it additionally got an attack level increase, making Sol 5K less disadvantageous on block. Sol 6S has increased recovery, making it more dangerous to whiff. It also received an adjustment to its air knockback to allow Sol to easily combo into clean hit Fafnir. 5H has decreased knockback, making it harder to combo off of outside of the corner. JD also has this change, which is notable as it means his wall bounce combos don't work from quite as far as they used to. Gunflame deals less damage in the latter half of its travel time. Volcanic Viper S and H now have a higher hitbox for the latter half of their active frames. Patch notes state that this is to make it easier to combo after getting a high up while splat as Sol. SVV now can't be cancelled into supers. This stops Kara DP into super, and is likely a countermeasure to stop Sol from being able to Kara cancel this SDP into HMC for an invulnerable life bar nuke. Big change to HVV, as now on clean hit near the corner, it changes the wall break value to maximum, similar to Slayer's Pile Bunker. This seriously limits Sol's HVV loops and breaks his previous way to achieve massive damage. Luckily, he's received a million new combos you'll see later on. Bandit Revolver has had its recovery increased when only the first hit is performed. This makes BR1 more minus on block, nerfing the RPS Sol had here, as previously blocking a well-spaced BR1 put him in a pretty advantageous guessing situation. It also breaks a good amount of his mid-screen loops. I didn't record this combo, but it used to work pre-patch. Bandit Bringer sees a lot of changes for both ground and air. Starting with changes to both of them, the damage is increased and so is the attack level. Sol also slows down after landing a little more. It also got a higher bounce, getting Sol better combos on RC or counter hit. There were pushbox changes to reduce the amount of jank interactions as well. For grounded only, Bandit Bringer got increased landing recovery, balancing it out a little combined with the attack level increase. It also builds wall break less. Air Bandit Bringer got a pretty huge change, that being you can no longer charge it. This means Sol can't vary his landing timings as much as he could, and he should be much less frustrating to anti-air, although his air tools are still incredibly strong. To balance this out, it received less landing recovery, making it a little safer on whiff or block. The knockback is decreased, keeping Sol closer after recovery as well. It's also seen a bunch of changes to the way it moves, such as no longer being affected by momentum, having a consistent falling speed regardless of starting height, and having faster rising movement which then slows down later on. Wild Throw got increased damage. Night Raid Vortex got a huge rework, now is a staple part of Sol's combo structure, with the biggest change being that you can cancel into this move from normals now. The fully charged version also comes out quicker than it used to. NRV starts moving faster at the start of its activation, and slows down after. To help with input reading, they made it so its hold inputs are recognized later. NRV got decreased damage normally, but increased damage of the fully charged version. Additionally, the fully charged version has higher attack level, making it less punishable. It seems like they want you to use Charge NRV as your new low-profile attack and only use the tap version in combos. Finally, it got decreased launch height and lost hard knockdown to stop Soul from just converting every single hit into a game loss. He still gets the hard knockdown on full charge or counter hit though. Fafnir was additionally rekitted to be a combo tool, being able to be cancelled into from his normals. Interestingly, this move was awarded a clean hit property as well, giving the move better properties on connect when spaced correctly. This move saw significant changes to its duration, getting decreased startup, increased actives, and increased recovery. This move had its damage reduced on normal hit and increased on clean hit, further emphasizing its importance. Fafnir depletes risk less and has reduced juggle scaling across the board, making it better combo filler. Majorly important, Fafnir loses its guard crush, meaning the move is minus now. The knockback of Fafnir has been changed significantly, no longer ground bouncing on normal hit and only ground bouncing on clean hit. Lastly, we see changes to the move's collision boxes, and it got its hitbox extended lower to hit low-profile moves easier. Tyrant Rave had its clean hit property more emphasized in Soul's toolkit, starting with an increased range and reduced height to proc the clean hit. It gets better forward movement on the clean hit, and different hit stop and damage animations to make it easier for Soul to tell if he got the clean hit or not. Normal hits forward movement was also increased a little. The clean hits damage is increased, and normal hits is decreased. It also got a bug fix. For Soul's final move change, HMC has received a complete rework into a hopefully usable super now. This move is still a command grab, but it can be comboed into, and costs 100% meter similar to Slayer's Last Horizon. Its startup was reduced, and its damage was increased alongside its minimum possible damage. It also received a better proximity for its activation to accommodate its use in combos. So, Soul's changes. They're huge, almost enough to call this a rework, and I'm not sure if we can say whether he'll be nerfed or buffed. Seeing his HVV loops gone is a breath of fresh air, but Soul will be getting significantly better combos off grounded hit thanks to him now having meterless launchers from a distance with HVV and clean hit Fafnir. Ultimately, I'm going to chalk this one up as a rebalance. Kai received changes to better emphasize his shock state in his toolkit, and in turn received nerfs to his most egregious combo tools. Starting us off, 6H has increased recovery. This is mostly to target Kai's 6H loops in the corner, I'd imagine, dropping the move's combo utility a little. Kai's JS has a better lower hitbox and hurtbox. All versions of ground and air stun edge now get more hit stop when hit in shock state and dragon install, letting Kai keep the advantage a little more when shooting fireballs. This change sounds minor at first, but the increased hit stop is significant, allowing Kai to do new combos, new mix-ups, and he actually has an infinite right now, which will certainly be nerfed, but it's pretty ridiculous as things stand. Foudra Arc had its falling speed increased after the ground bounce, making it harder to combo off of and less advantageous after hit. This is a big change, as now Kai's corner-to-corner juggle routes off catching backdash or similar hit just don't work anymore. Kai's SDP also got the change to not allow it to be cancelled into supers. HDP received increased damage and got better knockback during shock state to allow Kai to combo off it, sort of replacing Kai's Foudra Arc as his mid-screen combo filler, albeit only working during shock state. This move also received a better downwards hitbox. It's also received less juggle scaling from repeated move use during shock state. Finally, Daraklat got increased knockback on counter hit. This is another big nerf to Kai's mid-screen combo utility. So those are Kai's changes. I went into this thinking that Kai might be nerfed since his mid-screen combos became so much weaker, but with Kai's newfound ability to enforce 50-50s with solid damage, play neutral more effectively, and have a whole ass infinite, makes me feel more positive on his changes. We'll call it a rebalance. Mei has received some nerfs to her buttons, but she's received a healthy amount of damage increases to keep her identity as a bruiser alive. 5k has increased startup. Farslash has increased startup, but reduced recovery. 2S has increased startup and increased recovery. These three normal changes are hugely impactful, as one of Mei's best strengths was how well she was able to wall you out with fast, high damage, low recovery normals, with 5k and 2S being the main offenders. With these changes, she shouldn't be as much of a brick wall as she used to be. 5H got increased damage and a new launch on counter hit, letting her get a massive combo. This launch is also improved for air hit, getting a better ground bounce should you score a hit like that. 2H also got increased damage. So did 6H, but it got a better hurtbox during its activation too. JH, 2H, and JD all got more damage, but JD got increased recovery as well. One of Mei's more interesting changes, Split can now be controlled with forward and back to steer Mei's descent through the air. This should allow for some absolutely unseeable mix-ups and more freedom over Mei's already insane mobility. Lastly, Yamada got more damage. Mei's changes are small but impactful. Her buttons being overall nerfed is huge, and I think even with the 5H and Vault changes, Mei will probably come out a little weaker this patch compared to the last, barring the possibility that the steering lets Mei do some seriously messed up mix-ups or something. Axel has received a new input for Rensen along with damage buffs for almost all his normals, and a pretty big nerf to counterbalance things. Getting the damage buffs out of the way first. 5P, 2P, 6K, 2S, 2H, JP, JS, and JH all got increased damage on a tipper connect. Additionally, 6H got increased launch height. Rensen was changed from a charge motion to quarter circle forward slash. This is really weird, but it does allow Axel to combo into it from 6K, so it's overall a buff. It also got a cancel into 1 vision and increased damage. As for increased damage all the time, Upchain, Explosion, Snail, and Axel Bomber got better damage. Whistling Wind got a launch on grounded hit, giving it really solid combo utility at a close range, but it can't all be good. Rainwater received a pretty substantial nerf, losing its vacuum effect that it's had all this time. This is both block and hit, meaning Axel's combo routing with Rainwater is weakened a lot, and it isn't a potent pressure tool anymore, just making Axel's face like it did over 3 years ago. It did receive a better launch on hit, so he gets a little something, but I don't know, did Axel really need a nerf like this? Lastly, Sickle Storm got increased recovery and better launch height, plus a tumble. This is notable because now the move is punishable when you block it instead of forcing you to jump in between the first and second hits. Axel's changes kind of confuse me. He's been a weak character for a really long time, and even though they've buffed him every patch, he's stayed behind the pack. So in this patch, he receives one of the biggest nerfs he's ever gotten alongside some pretty mediocre at best buffs? Questionable judgment, but maybe I just don't see the vision. Hoping the best for all my Axel homies. Chipp's changes from a surface level are pretty small, but that's because he's gotten an entire new move, Tightrope Run. This move sets up a tightrope across the screen and allows Chipp to hop on and run across either the top or bottom of it, in a special movement state like his wall run that allows him to attack while moving and jump off at various angles. This move gives him unique combo options, mix options, and better mobility for approaching mid-screen, but the challenge is finding the time to set it up. All in all, seems like a powerful tool. Starting us off after Tightrope is actually a notable nerf, and that is that Chipp's 5P loses its 3-frame startup. Ring the bell, everyone. 3-frame attacks in Guilty Gear Strive are dead. There are no more left. 2H got a launch angle adjustment to help Chipp combo off Tightrope with it. 6H got reduced horizontal knockback, letting him follow up more consistently. Grounded diagonal Alpha Blade also got an adjusted launch angle to account for Tightrope. All of Chipp's wall run buttons got increased damage, but wall run K can no longer Gatling into itself, strangely enough. Chipp's last change is that Zansei Roga got better damage and better minimum damage. Should make this super a little more worth using, as it's pretty bad pre-patch. Chipp's changes are short but sweet, and his new move should fill a lot of issues with his overall toolkit. I'd expect to see a surge of strength and popularity for the guy. Things are looking good for the Eastern Chipp Kingdom. Potemkin slides in as our second character to see a major rework, this time adjusting almost every core tool the character has to better fit his heavyweight identity. We'll start off with a few quality of life changes, with Pot now getting more meter from walking forward, and his hurt box on his guard crush animation being shrunk. Following that, we see a good number of his normals nerfed, surprisingly. 5P was buffed, getting a better hitbox and smaller hurtbox, but the rest of his smaller attacks were all affected negatively in some way. 2P has increased startup, active frames, and recovery, all around making this a much laggier button. In return, it's received a bigger hitbox, but also bigger hurtbox. 5K received increased actives and increased recovery, again raising its total duration. It also loses the extended hurtbox, making it harder to whiff punish. 2K got its startup decreased, but recovery increased, and also had its hit and hurtboxes shrunk. Chief among these normal changes has to be 6K though. This move shockingly lost its ability to preserve momentum when Kara cancelled, meaning there's no more Kara specials for pot mains to show their execution through. I'll reserve my thoughts for the end of Pot's segment. 6K also got decreased startup, but increased recovery, keeping it at the same total duration but making it faster. It had a lot of knockback changes, including decreased horizontal knockback, increased knockback on wall bounce, and decreased tumble duration on counter hit. Lastly for this move, it had a change in when its increased push box size activates. It has increased knockback and no longer decelerates when you hit the opponent, and weirdly enough, it gets to keep its momentum after you hit it and cancel into a special as opposed to before. Pot's Close Slash has decreased knockback and a different hit effect when hit OTG, making it deal more damage but make it harder for Pot to keep his turn. It's also received increased forward movement during its recovery. Far Slash and 2S received adjustments to their hit and hurt boxes, mainly removing the extended hurt box during its recovery, meaning they'll be harder to whiff punish. 2H got increased damage and had its launch changed. It now launches lower and with less of a float, but is untechable and launches higher on counter hit. This also had hitbox and hurtbox changes, primarily to expand its lower hitbox and reduce its frontal hurtbox. 6H got changes to its launch, getting longer tumble duration and a new wall bounce effect. It's also received hit and hurtbox changes, having a smaller hurtbox before the attack activates. JP, JK, JS, and JH all received hit and hurtbox changes, with JP getting increased recovery and JS getting increased startup to boot. JH got adjustments to its wall break duration and lost an attack level as well. Potbuster got increased damage and, hugely, now has a single hit of armor, making it devilish as an Abare option. It did get reduced launch height, making it harder to keep advantage, but it's also gotten a larger proximity range, meaning it's not as affected by the loss of Kara Potbuster as it would be otherwise. Heat Knuckle got increased damage, is less affected by momentum, has a worse launch, and has a smaller hurtbox. Heat Tackle got its input changed from half circle forward H to a DP on kick. This is to reduce the amount of times you accidentally get Heat Tackle instead of Hammerfall from a crouching position. It sees increased damage, active frames, and movement duration, and also lands quicker after connecting with the opponent, which will increase its advantage when blocked in the air. This move has knockback changes too, with reduced knockback both on hit and on block. Mega Fist Forward has decreased landing recovery, but isn't any more advantageous on block. Pot hops higher and receives more horizontal knockback and an increased falling speed after the ground bounce when hitting opponents with forward Mega Fist. The launch height was increased to balance out the increased fall speed, making it overall easier to continue a combo after counter hit Mega Fist. This move had major adjustments to its hit and hurt box, primarily to make it a bit easier to anti-air, but funnily enough, it's also received a proximity requirement so that it can't hit opponents behind Potemkin. This is one of those changes that makes you realize that devs watch the game's competitive scene too, because there is no shot this change isn't a direct response to this moment.
Release the double jump as well. Wow, the Son again. OTG's not enough. BRC. Wow, the Son dodge. I don't even know what happened. A boy somehow, some way wins the set.
How did that hit? What?
I don't know, Jumper. I really don't know.
Did it hit from behind?
Back Mega Fist sees a lot of these changes too, with it getting that proximity requirement, but interestingly, it's been given worse reward, being less plus on block, knocking the opponent away on hit, but getting less jump back distance, making it more reasonable as an option mid-screen. Slidehead had its armor duration increased, and remains in counter hit state during its recovery. It's also gotten increased recovery and increased damage, meaning this isn't a zero damage move anymore. This move also gets a new guard crush, making it dangerous to block mid-screen. You'll want to backdash like in the old games now. Finally for Slidehead, it's got increased launch height. Hammerfall is seeing significant changes, with increased recovery, increased speed at its start, and increased max duration. Weirdly though, you can no longer cancel the startup of it into break, meaning you can't really do Hammerfall break pressure. This is important because they reduced the recovery of Hammerfall break, meaning if they left you able to cancel the startup of Hammerfall, he would have had his old pressure back. But he doesn't. This move also gets better speed at its start and retains the armor from Hammerfall now, making a better option all around. Flick is overhauled too, getting a new input from half circle back slash to quarter circle back kick. It can now reflect almost every projectile, meaning Pot is no longer just unable to deflect random things anymore. It has had its properties weakened on hit, with decreased damage, attack level, and knockback, making it worse as anything but an anti-fireball tool. It's got increased general stats to help out a little though, with increased startup, active, and decreased recovery frames. After flicking a projectile, Pot becomes invulnerable now, making it much harder to punish him for a bad reflect. It's had knockback nerfs as well, with removed tumble on normal charge and an increased launch height and techable knockdown on the normal hit. Hurtbox adjustments were seen too, with a smaller hurtbox, bigger hitbox, and the standardization of its hitbox throughout its active frames. The projectiles Pot flicks get buffed properties, now being multi-hit, having better launch height, being untechable, and having a bigger hitbox. Garuda Impact has seen a seemingly small change with huge ramifications, that being the move now counts as a projectile. This matters because some important properties about the move changes. For one, it can no longer counter-hit the opponent, and remains in counter-hit state during its recovery. For two, it's no longer affected by knockback, meaning FDing it doesn't make as much of a difference anymore. And for three, it's got increased damage scaling and decreased chip damage. Additionally, they've made it have less hit stop, stagger duration, and guard crush duration, but the frame advantage on all these situations remains unchanged. You'll just be out of the guard crush animation sooner. The move now has reduced tumble duration and increased falling speed to cap it out. HPB also gets an input change from double quarter circle forward to half circle back forward. It gets increased damage but decreased launch height. Gigantic High doesn't travel beyond the corner, which is a change that confuses me, as notably, it already does not travel beyond the corner, but whatever. And the best for last, Pot receives a change to his Wild Assault. Or, to put it in better terms, he receives a new Wild Assault. A blue one. He loses White Wild Assault. What? Its hitbox is smaller now as well, and you all know what Blue Wild Assault does, so there you have it. That is finally all of Pot's changes. Jeez. So, I don't want to come off as too aggressive in my thoughts, but these Potemkin changes, in my opinion, are a miss at best. Easily my least favorite changes of the season, and I'll tell you why. The removal of 6k Kara removes one of the most unique things about Potemkin, and the only single reason he was able to be a consistently performing character, and it feels like all this patch did was put band-aids over the removal of this ginormous tool, but leaving the gaping wound still open. He's lost what made him unique to emphasize this big body grappler feel, but what that means to me is they felt like he was doing too much of his own thing, so they wanted to return him to normalcy for grapplers, which is poorly designed low tier that everyone hates. I made a video on why I thought Pot was cleverly designed in this game, man. Why are we doing all this? I doubt he'll be unplayable bottom tier garbage, with as strong a tool as new Potbuster is, but he's going to be much more frustrating to fight, more boring to play, and have less consistency within his toolkit. This patch really feels like a huge step back for his character design. Man. Faust also sees pretty significant changes, getting a lot of quality of life for his control over items, but with a reduction of power for his strongest tools. Faust's JD now works differently, having a separate hitbox that hits items and one that hits opponents. Previously, he could only bat the hammer, and the radius he could hit them was really small, but now he can hit every item and it's much more generous range-wise. J2K has increased landing recovery, making it less safe on block or hit. Faust's air throw got buffed, getting decreased blowback and increased throw height. Previously, Faust could never really get Oki off a successful air throw, but now he can. Faust's item spit now can be steered with forward or back to change the angle of the item he shoots, letting him control their position more easily. Hole-in-One, Faust's golf move gets increased damage on clean hit. Oh, and it also becomes a new move. Yeah, Faust can now perform Hole-in-One with quarter circle back heavy, albeit without the clean hit, but it's really interesting and funny that Faust got 2 new specials before characters like Zato or Leo got 1. This move is meant to hit items on the ground, launching them at your opponent. Love now doesn't explode after an area shift under certain conditions. I'm assuming this is talking about a setup where he could previously end a Charge Dust combo with it and have it land on the screen once everyone recovers, but I don't know how to set that up, sorry. Every single one of Faust's items got changed to how it behaves while airborne, most of them getting the ability to hit the opponent when mid-air if the item is struck with dust or hole-in-one. Weight got increased damage, and so did Bomb. Slipping on the banana peel is now a hard knockdown. That's pretty funny. Lastly, Faust can hit the meteors as they rain down with his bat. Super weird, but looks cool. Faust's changes are nice, but relatively minor considering his new move even. It's appreciated that his dive kick was nerfed, but I don't think he's any worse off given that he gets so much more control over his item usage. They did well with this one. Millia has received relatively small changes to her air normals, and a pretty big nerf to her most broken tool. Milia's air backdash now lets you cancel attacks from it earlier, and it decelerates more when cancelled this way. This makes it more effective as a mix-up tool than it already was. Along with the universal 6p changes, Millia also got decreased active frames and a slightly better hurt box. Her close slash got better damage. Her JK got a better launch height. JH got a bigger hit and hurt box. JD gets more damage and can be cancelled at a lower altitude than before. It's also received bigger hit and hurt boxes. Iron Savior does more damage. Mirage has a longer special cancel window. Artemis gets more damage. And last, but certainly not least, Capelle no longer launches on grounded hit. This is actually huge, as while she will still get a knockdown at most ranges, she won't be getting anywhere near the reward she used to. Millia is probably nerfed this version, exclusively because of this Rose change, and while the move was certainly extremely toxic, it's surprising to see her nerfed overall. I'm not sure she was overpowered in her current state. Zato receives some solid changes to his normals and eddy swap, but a nerf to sword super. His close slash gets increased damage. His far slash gets increased attack level and decreased knockback. This lets him much more consistently combo far slash into 5H, and opens up a combo from far slash directly into Invite Hell, meaning he's more competent at the tip of his normal range. 5H also has reduced knockback. 2S has increased active frames. 6H has reduced startup, reduced knockback, and increased horizontal movement speed. These changes, other than the reduced startup, don't really affect the move's utility much. All of Eddie's moves get increased damage, but Oppose has reduced Eddie gauge cost while blocking and increased cost when attacking. Break the Law's Eddie Swap follow-up now has its activation condition check whether or not Eddie is alive, instead of if the Eddie gauge is full or empty. This allows Zato to teleport to Eddie in the recovery of his final move before a despawn, where before, because the attack emptied the gauge, Zato wouldn't be allowed to teleport. Damned Fang finally gives him full Eddie gauge on Connect again, officially making the move as good as it was 2 years ago. Drunkard Shade got a bigger hit and hurt box. Lastly, Sun Void got a nerf to its recovery for Eddie, meaning he can't just jail you into drills anymore for free pressure, which is pretty big. It's also seen increased damage. All in all, the Sun Void change is pretty noteworthy, but I don't think it means these changes are nerfs. All his changes are nice, and Zato will probably stay around the same, but he's not that great anyways, so it's weird they refuse to buff him still. Ramlethal is our next character with a huge rework, and while her patch notes don't go on as long as Pot's, her changes are possibly the biggest rework the game has ever seen to a character's design. Ramlethal's sword mechanic has been completely overhauled, and she's seen a number of adjustments to better focus her gameplay around these changes. Starting with said overhaul, Ramlethal's sword tosses were all buffed significantly, which I'll go into detail on later, but the big change is that Ram can no longer pick up her swords by standing next to them. She has to wait the whole 6 seconds for them to fly back, and when they fly slower than they did before. This means that managing her sword toss is much more of a factor for her gameplay than before, and this should lead to some more interesting decision making when playing the character. 5P and 2P received damage nerfs. 6P received universal changes, a damage nerf, but a buff to its hit state so it gets a standing launch effect like Soul Close Slash, meaning comboing into other moves make them hit airborne, and increasing the move's advantage on hit while keeping it the same on block. 5K, 2K, and Close Slash had damage nerfs. A number of Ram's sword normals had decreased damage without the sword and increased damage with the sword. Far Slash has both, 2S has both, 5H and 6H have only increased damage, and 2H only has increased sword damage. This change is also seen with her air normals. JP has decreased damage, JS had increased sword damage, JH has increased sword active frames, hitbox, and damage, and JD had decreased damage. Onto Sword Toss, this move has increased damage for all versions, gets a new Guard Crush effect making it much more plus, and an increased duration before the explosion, letting Ram stagger her pressure with it much more effectively. Blocking Sword Toss is going to be even more of a nightmare than it used to be. The biggest change to Sword Toss, though, is that S-Toss is now at a whole new angle. Instead of being a high throw, this move now throws the sword down towards the ground, making it worth using as a pressure tool and actually being an incredibly strong mid-screen option. This comes with a new launch effect as well, letting Ram get a combo. Dalro got an overhaul, now having increased startup meaning it doesn't combo from lights, a decreased attack level, but a new launch on ground hit. It seems like they want to emphasize Ram's issues with up-close conversions, while making her better at the mid-range. Dalro also gets decreased knockback on hit. Its speed is adjusted at the start of the attack. The launch for Dalro is majorly adjusted to account for its new grounded launch, and it's seen a minor push box change as well. Flip Kick is back to being an overhead, but its damage is decreased. It moves faster, but knocks back less. They also adjusted the hit and hurt boxes of this attack to make them hit higher up. Ground version of this move only has a reduced startup, increased actives, and increased recovery. This move also gets decreased attack level, meaning it'll be punishable if you block it now. To accommodate, this move now launches as well. I think they want you to use this move as a surprise overhead and a block string to vary up Ram's offense, and keep yourself safe with Sword Toss Explosion. Air Flip has decreased recovery, improving its use as a landing option. Sword Slam got a huge change, as it can now be special cancelled into. This just looks so wrong to me, but I guess I'll get used to it. Its startup was increased, and so was its movement speed, so they probably want you to use this as a combo ender now. It's also got some bigger hitboxes for using this move with only the H-Sword. Ram's Rekka is another special that's been overhauled. The first hit is slower and has increased recovery, making it more minus, but has increased damage, decreased knockback allowing for longer range combos, and a bigger, lower hitbox and more generous air juggle. Ram's Rekka follow-ups can now be inputted with just back P instead of the full quarter circle motion, which is nice. Second follow-up gets increased startup and increased recovery, also making it more punishable. Its damage is increased, its attack level is decreased, and so is its knockback. This move now gets a ground launch. This move gets a guard crush effect to the charged version, meaning it's much less disadvantageous than the newly weaker uncharged version. The second hit of Rekka also hard knockdown to the charge. Third hit of Rekka sees increased startup, but decreased recovery. It does get the decreased attack level, so this is probably to let Ram get better Oki off a combo while keeping her punishable. This move gets better damage uncharged and worse damage when charged. It also sees increased on-block knockback, but reduced knockback on hit. This follow-up gets the guard crush and hard knockdown when charged as well. We also see a higher and farther launch, giving this move more corner carry. Ondo got a minor bug fix. Air sword swipes got increased sword damage. Calvados got a huge change to its use case, as it can now only be used when both swords are equipped. This flips the move on its head, as it used to be the super you used to get your swords back, but I guess they didn't want to let Ram bail out of misusing her swords now that she can't pick them up anymore. We see increased damage as well. Mortabato has increased damage with both swords, but decreased damage with 1 or 0 swords, and it gets a decreased attack level with both swords equipped. This move is still giga punishable. This change is probably to help with the jank interactions when this move would hit a secondary object and be active for over a second. It can still happen, but it'll be less egregious at least. So, Ram's changes are really interesting. This is probably the most impactful rework a character's ever got, completely changing the trajectory of her design, and unlike the pot changes, I'm all here for it conceptually. I think Ram's sword toss mechanic was always a little underbaked, and she was one of the driest characters in the roster, and this new dynamic to her gameplay gives her more of that Guilty Gear flavor she felt like she was lacking. However, in terms of game balance and design, the current version of Ram is seriously messed up. She has a lot of things that are way stronger than any other character is allowed to have, and there are ways that she interacts with the opponent that just break the rules of the game. Right now, she's pretty poorly tuned, but hopefully they'll tone all that back and she'll be a really fun new character. Leo received changes to strengthen his versatility in back turn and weaken his capabilities in front turn, particularly with regards to his extremely safe and reliable neutral strategies, contextualizing the character in a more unique way. Huge change right off the bat, holding back during Leo's forward dash now halts his momentum. This means Leo can no longer keep his momentum from forward dash while blocking, severely nerfing his dash block potential and making his unique dash just as much of a weakness as it is a strength. SDP's startup can't be cancelled into overdrives. You gotta be insane to be able to execute this though, I'm not about to prove it. HDP now has decreased horizontal knockback for the final hit. This is to accommodate for the next change. That being, Zwite now sees Leo run slower. This makes it worse in neutral and as a pressure extender, but up close it isn't any slower, so it's still potent mix, just not as YOLO as it once was. That's okay though, because Turbulence now has crazy pushback on block, meaning Leo now has a relatively safe way to get into stance, as only an IB will get him punished, whereas before, this move could always be punished. Back turn received a slew of buffs, starting with the dash, which can now be cancelled into normals and specials similar to his front turn dash. The devs note that if Leo crosses up the opponent and then cancels into a normal, he will not automatically turn around, so it's not like he's going to have unreactable step through into button cancel. He just has mostly unreactable step through into button, like usual. All of Leo's back turn normals get increased damage and can no longer be cancelled into other actions on startup. I think this is to nerf one of Leo's currently existing option selects, but I'm not sure. Stance D can now be cancelled into a dash if he doesn't get the full parry effect, meaning he can keep his offense more easily. Leo's back turn dash now has strike and throw in vuln like a regular back dash. Other than that, Leo only has damage changes with back turn command grab, guard crush, and super all getting more damage. Leo changes are short but significant, and I'm not sure how he'll shape up. Leo players seem to think he's worse, and the dash changes are massive for sure, but a safe way into back turn and more useful tools when in it is going to make people realize how messed up his options are from there real quick. So I'm going to play it on the safe side and call it a rework instead of a nerf. Nago sees changes to his gameplay flow to better suit his changing playstyle depending on blood levels, losing offensive tools at high blood but gaining better neutral reward, and gaining new offensive tools relating to managing his blood properly, along with the nerfing of his most powerful tool. Now, I know you Nago mains will want to hear this, because in training mode, you can finally set the blood gauge level. Took him long enough. Nago's 6k is now adjusted to maintain momentum on cancel, and crumples on normal hit. This now means that Nago can Kara cancel his 6k into special moves, giving him Kara command grab. So we think Nago needed this, but Pot certainly needed it removed. Going into Nago's H normals, we have some big changes. 5H and 2H can no longer be cancelled into specials, they're just one hit and nothing more. In return, they've received increased damage, a new guard crush to make them better on block, and hard knockdowns. Additionally, 2H launches farther on counter hit. 6H had its damage increased. Blood Rage got some changes to allow it to be better used as a tool instead of a mistake. The Blood Pop now sends the opponent flying into the air for a combo, but to balance this, there are no longer hard knockdown if you fail to secure the advantage. It also has received a better hitbox. Clone gets better launch height, improving its use as combo filler. This is important, as DP now automatically grounds the opponent from the second hit, losing the ground bounce. This change is really significant because it means Nago won't be heavily rewarded off 50-50s with either this or Beyblade should you choose to block low every time. Zansetsu sees a buff to its minimum guaranteed damage, but now reduces Nago's health to 1 when he uses it. Seems like a nerf, but given that Nago now has a reliable way to use this super after comboing from Blood Pop, it feels warranted to me. Nago's changes are pretty experimental, but I don't think they're objectively bad. His combo structure does get hurt by them, and him losing his 50-50 reward is pretty massive, but improved zoning with already powerful buttons at high blood could make him really rough to approach, and the Blood Rage change means that if Nago can find the right opening, he can legitimately just one-shot you. We'll see how things pan out. Giovanna has received improvements to her mobility options as well as shifting the power around in her offense, with the trade-off that her most powerful tool is weakened. Gio's dash now gets more momentum carried over, meaning her already ridiculous dash cancels get way better. On top of that, her possession mechanic now influences her movement speed, with her dash being faster the higher meter she has. 6H has received a lot of adjustments to its later hits. The final hit has decreased landing recovery, decreased knockback, and increased movement speed. It also gets higher launch height after the ground bounce. The second hit gets less knockback too, to help keep it consistent with the new version of the third. Sepultura has increased recovery, making it more minus on block, but it gets better pushback. This means that Gio is still similarly safe to before, but now if I beat or misspaced, the move can be punished by people with 5-frame mashes. This applies to the powered up version too, which now sends them super far. The powered up version also gets less knockback on hit, but increased movement speed on activation. The move also hard knockdowns the opponent. Lastly, it gets its lower hitbox and hurtbox expanded. Spiral Arrow's powered up version was Gio's strongest tool, and it's been nerfed. This move has decreased recovery and increased movement speed, but it loses the guard crush effect that made it so messed up. You'll now be able to more effectively interact with Gio's strike throw now that Garudog is no more. Sol Nascente got reduced knockback and falling speed when blocked midair, making it a more advantageous anti-air. It also received decreased ground knockback and falling speed for the non-powered up version, whereas powered up got increased falling speed. Lastly, Shave is now no longer counter hit during its activation. Gio's changes are real nice. A whole slew of buffs, and while the removal of Garudog certainly hurts, I think her mobility and offensive enhancements make her a better character overall. Anji has received a small but significant set of changes to more emphasize his risk-taking gameplay style, improving his offensive options but reducing their safety and reward in certain cases. JD gets increased damage. Really silly change, Charged Fujin can now be cancelled into specials. This means Anji can structure his offense with looping Fujin and cancel into other specials to bait out attempted punishes. To facilitate this, it gets higher damage and decreased multi-use proration. The move also has reduced horizontal knockback and increased falling speed. Nagiha has decreased pushback. This is major, as this is Anji's only remotely safe Fujin ender, and having it push you back less means you'll get a punish way more often than you would before. Rin has had its startup reduced, making it really hard to react to, and it got better damage as well. However, it loses its ground bounce, meaning Anji can't Roman cancel off it for a combo, significantly hurting his ability to cash out a mix-up into big damage. It does hard knockdown, so Anji will keep his turn, but this is a significant change to the move's utility. Ko gets increased damage. Parry Super now turns you in the direction of the opponent after a parry, meaning if you proc it from behind, it'll turn around and hit you. Anji's changes are pretty scary, but could end up working out in the long run. Nerfs to the consistency of an already inconsistent character is bold, and Fujin into Fujin isn't as frightening as it may seem at first glance, as Anji lacks options to stop fuzzy throw, mash, or jump out here that don't force him to commit heavily, but that seems to be the playstyle they want to push for him. Rin's changes seem really bad, but the hard knockdown is extremely valuable, as now Anji can end combos with a hard knockdown and get safe jumps, and he previously struggled against reversals heavily. All in all, I certainly don't think I can call it buffs, but I'd be hard-pressed to call it nerfs either. Another rebalance goes to Mr. Mito. He's gotta be going for the world record with all the burfs he keeps getting. Ino has had some buffs to her long-range neutral options and a couple offensive buffs that should help her out this season. Ino's air throw has decreased knockback. Note can now be used while you already have a note on the screen, detonating the previous one. This is a pretty big improvement to Ino's fireball game, as a bad fireball doesn't lock her out of it for its entire duration. It's also got decreased knockback and falling speed, which should make it easier to follow up. Chemical Love got the ability to be steered forward, giving it a burst of momentum. Additionally, the air version is subject to your current momentum, meaning it can be used while falling. Its damage has also been increased. Stroke received a hurt box reduction at the end of its active frames. MLA is now more active, and had its input buffer after hit increased to help out with cancelling it into dive without being too early and dropping it. All of Ino's charged dive kicks got damage buffs, but she also got more buffs for H-charge dive. H-dive takes less time for a full charge, gets more hit stop on its last hit, and gets increased launch height, all for the charged version. Ultimate Fortissimo gets a reduction to its launch height on counter hit, assumedly to stop jank interactions from breaking the super. Ino's changes are exclusively positive, so it's safe to say she's buffed. These buffs aren't too insane, so I don't think she'll be broken now, but she'll have a lot more stability and consistency in neutral, which is really nice. Goldlewis has received some of the most nutty changes of the whole patch, with insane changes to the way Security and Behemoth Typhoon works. Starting slow, 6H has increased damage, and picking up in pace, Security level now sees a bunch of changes to facilitate its buffs. There's now a meter penalty to Security gauge every time you use. The charge speed is decreased at level 1, but increased at level 2. All this is because of what they did to Behemoth Typhoon. Now, if you input the same direction of BT twice, you'll cancel it into a new BT for some seriously ridiculous combos at the cost of a bar of security. All BTs have had their damage increased as well. A lot of BTs had their hit effect changed at certain points. 64 BT now launches directly upwards in the latter half. 248 now gets a new frontal hitbox. 486's first half now sends the opponent forward, getting a bigger hitbox, and changes the proximity requirement to check later. 862 loses its ground bounce, but the first half of its active frames knocks the opponent forward every time. 842's first half now always blows the opponent to the back, and also lost ground bounce. 426's first half sends the opponent straight down and gets a new ground bounce. A lot of air BTs got increased recovery, but this is to allow them to cancel better into other BTs with their security level. Thunderbird now doesn't lose you your security gauge if you get hit early into its startup. Skyfish now works differently, shooting repeatedly by holding the S button and stopping upon release. This also means you can choose your firing level. At level 3, if you stop shooting early, you won't spin the full security gauge, but you'll also only get the level 1 hit effect, with its power ramping up as the move continues. This move also now forces wall break if triggered near the corner. That's kinda fun. Burn It Down now doesn't lose you security gauge if you get hit early into its startup. These Goldlewis changes are frankly insane. This character was already pretty good, and it looks like his damage, combos, offense, and resource management are all improving, so I'd be shocked if we don't see more of him in the future. Jacko has received the second least changes of the patch, getting a nerf to her combos and a buff to Servant Shoot. Jacko's 2H has increased damage. Jacko's 2D has increased knockback, meaning it sends the opponent farther away. This is notable, as it means her Oki is worse off the move, and on counter hit, she can't do crazy bombos all the time anymore. It actually kind of sucks. Servant Shoot can now be dash cancelled if it hits a servant. This is really nice and fun, and it gives her new options for pressure and ways to convert her zoning into offense. Jacko's changes are very limited, but certainly an overall nerf. Her losing her only other big counter hit starter after she already lost big damage off 5H is rough, and she loses a ton of setups off knockdown with 2D now. If messed up new setups with Servant Shoot are found, she could do a little bit better, but it's definitely looking rough. Chaos receives a small amount of changes, and they're mostly pretty impactful nerfs, believe it or not. 5D gets forward movement during its recovery. This helps him stay in longer, but also means you can sometimes throw him afterwards. Double-edged sword. 2D gets increased launch height. J2K gets a new ground bounce, and now always sends the opponent straight down and forward regardless of Chaos's position. This could be good, but also messes up a lot of his previous setups if the opponent gets hit early on, making him even more executionally demanding. Fire gets increased damage. Finally, for the big change, Scapegoat now no longer negates your move's hitbox, only being a wall you can't walk through. This is massive, like huge, as now Chaos can't camp behind it and recover resources for free, then stop and punish you trying to break the clone. He's going to have a much harder time with resource economy, defense, and will have to engage with you in neutral. God bless Daisuke. It did also get increased movement speed moving backwards, meaning Chaos won't be directly punished during the move's activation as often. Chaos's changes are very welcome. Scapegoat absolutely needed a nerf, and it got the nerf it needed the most. The other changes are nice, but very minor, so I think Chaos will be noticeably weaker this version. Keep in mind, his health has also been moved from middle of the pack to bottom 5. I don't mean to spoil things too much, but oh my god. Baiken's changes may be the single most a character has ever gotten buffed in this game. Every problem this character had got fixed. Problems she didn't even have got fixed, and she got maybe the single most broken patch note I've ever seen. Good lord, it's Baiken's time to shine, I guess. Baiken's dash got increased forward movement speed and decreased acceleration. This already is massive. Baiken had the worst initial dash in the game, meaning her dash block and dash momentum was terrible. Now she can actually approach on zoners. Farslash has reduced knockback to allow it to combo into 5H more consistently. This fixes one of her biggest problems along with 5H's changes. 5H now gets a ground bounce, letting you combo into Kabari for a hard knockdown, off a 9-frame Farslash. It also loses wall bounce, but who cares, dude? 2H now launches shorter, meaning she can combo into Tatami more consistently. That's also huge! 6H got increased damage, also ground bounces, and bounces higher than it did before. JD has increased damage. Tether now has more vacuum power. Yosansun now has a vacuum effect when connecting in its latter half, meaning Baiken gets a pickup if this move hits as a cross-up. Who asked for this? This is so good! Hiragi can no longer be cancelled into supers at its startup. Are you guys ready for that patch note? The single most broken sentence in the whole game? Hiragi can now be activated while in block stun. Yeah, her 7-frame active counter that beats all strikes is now a guard cancel. It doesn't activate the throw animation, but still, free escape out of so many situations now. As if this weren't enough, Baiken can now do dash cancel after a successful Hiragi to get more advantage if she isn't able to connect the throw. As if all this wasn't enough, outside of block stun, this move gets increased active frames. Jesus. Baiken Super also gets some bug fixes that breaks a multi-hit, who cares? Dude, Baiken. All of these changes are so strong on their own. Together, it's just absolutely crazy what they did to this character. The Hiragi changes would have been enough. The button changes would have been enough. The change to the dash would have been enough. But altogether, I think it's unlikely that this character isn't absolutely insanely powerful. I'm just a humble content creator, but I would not be surprised to see Baiken go from bottom 3 to top 3 in a single patch, and I'd wager she could gun for the number 1 spot depending on what happens. Testament got almost no changes, but an improvement to their throw makes their offense more potent. 6H has increased damage. Throw now pops Stain Connect, letting Testament get a combo after a successful grab if they have Stain applied. Additionally, Stain can't run out during your throw animation, which is nice quality of life. Grave Reaper got its strike portion's damage increased. And that's it. Testament is for sure buffed because of the throw change, but overall barely adjusted at all. Bridget has had a significant change to her rolling movement special and got few changes other than that. Bridget had her close slash and jump H's changed to always knock towards her, improving consistency in air combos where the opponent could sometimes be sent the wrong way with a backwards hit. Roll now can be steered up or down with up or down during the attack. This comes with the major drawback of the removal of jump cancel from roll, limiting her mobility options from it heavily, but increasing roll's power as a tool on its own. It also got a bigger hurt box, making it easier to anti-air. Starship can't be cancelled to supers on startup. Loop the Loop got increased damage. Bridget's changes are strange, and honestly, I'm hard-pressed to find a reason to say it won't be a nerf. No jump cancel on roll means her mobility is so much more linear, and the steering of roll isn't going to be that insane, especially with it getting a bigger hurt box so you can anti-air better anyways. Sins received a rebalance to the way his stamina works, being more powerful when used on special follow-ups but taking longer to build. He's also seen some of his best normals nerfed. Sin's Farslash has increased recovery. Sin's 2S has increased startup, but gets a bigger hit and hurt box. Stamina has increased cooldown time, and the same recovery speed regardless of how much stamina Sin has. This is to counterbalance the insane new follow-ups. Beak follow-up has increased recovery, but increased knockback, and now guard crushes. It's got better movement speed and maintains momentum on cancel. The knockback from this move is shorter and has a longer tumble, and this is where the real money is. as it allows Sin to pick up a combo after using Gazelle Step to follow it up. Hawkbaker's follow-up has decreased recovery, increased damage, and increased movement speed. Additionally, the knockback now sends the opponent more vertical if the combo started on anything other than DP, which makes combos work much more consistently using it. Hoof Stomp follow-up sees increased recovery, decreased knockback, and gets a new Guard Crush. The move loses its tumble and gets a new ground bounce, giving it combo utility. Elkhunt's follow-up sees increased recovery, increased damage, decreased knockback, but increased Guard Crush duration. The knockback goes higher and farther as well. This one stayed about the same, but it was also the best follow-up by far, so that makes sense. Gazelle Step got a big change, and can now be performed individually with quarter circle back kick. It does still cost stamina to do this. This gives Sin a unique burst movement option and a solid combo tool to cash out from big counter hits. This move sees increased recovery, but a shrunk hurt box. RTL and Tyrant Barrel are back to costing stamina when cancelled into from a special, making Sin's stamina economy even harder to manage. Tyrant Barrel does get more damage though. I was a little mixed up on whether Sin was buffed or nerfed this patch, but I think I've come to the conclusion that he's buffed. The changes to all his stamina moves are insane, and he'll be an absolute menace on offense, but stamina is pretty hard to come by, and he relies on it more than he used to. However, being able to Guard Crush and stay plus after all of his stamina follow-ups on block is just too strong of a benefit for me to think that he's weaker. Bedman has seen general traits improved in exchange for reduced power of his strongest possible win condition, Guard Crush loops. 5H now has increased knockback. It also gets increased launch height and decreased blowback on counter hit. All of Bedman's specials get increased damage, damage for their error, and damage for their super error. Firewall now has a new damage effect, making it easier to connect all hits. Head Bomb now homes towards your character's ground position within a certain distance. If activated in the air, it explodes at a lower spot than it used to. However, it gets decreased Guard Crush duration. Fire Punch also gets decreased Guard Crush duration. Install Super gets decreased recovery, making it easier to use in combos. Bedman's changes are actually pretty nice. Improvements to his button reward, boosted damage, and the head bomb change in exchange for worse pressure sounds rough, but remembering his health changes from the middle of the pack to top 5 HP, and things become a lot more enticing. I'm saying he's buffed. Asuka's seen a lot of changes to various spells in his decks, intended to nerf Exodia and buff weaker test cases. Asuka's Fireball Super has decreased interval between hits, increased recovery, decreased hit stop, and decreased backwards movement. All in all, this makes the super less plus and spaces Asuka less. Bookmark Super now lasts longer, and you can now press forward or back to change test cases. It takes more mana, and the mana it takes increases as the super goes on, but it's affected by reduced mana cost. Overall, this super is honestly nerfed. The resource difference is pretty significant. Recover mana continuous increases at a faster speed. However, the effect duration is reduced. Mana continues to recover during hit stop Asuka applies, but if Asuka is being hit or blocking, the mana stops recovering entirely. This is a pretty big nerf to this spell, making it less helpful on defense, as Asuka won't be saved from Mana Crush when under the opponent's offense. Recover Mana Instant no longer discards all your spells, but has a reduced recovery amount. Bookmark Random Import now bookmarks spells in every slot, even filled ones. Low Gravity Staff has a reduced air dash minimum height when in effect, letting Asuka air dash lower to the ground. DP card can no longer be cancelled into super on startup. Bit Shift got a huge nerf, as it no longer can start at level 5, only starting at level 1. The spell also costs more mana, but it at least takes less time for the level of the spell to increase. RMS Boost has decreased damage at levels 1 and 2, but increased damage from 3 to 5. The Guard Crush is decreased, but gets bigger depending on the level of the spell. Asuka is pretty significantly nerfed, I'm not gonna lie. His nerfs to his best spells were heavy, and he didn't really get many buffs to bad spells, just adjustments to spells that were okay that make them still okay. Not looking great for the man, which is a shame, but he's sure to still have strong win cons outside of Test Case 3, so that might be the move going forward. Johnny received exactly one change, and that is that Mistfinder now can cut through projectiles. And Sega did get increased damage, but that's really it. This guy really dodged a bullet. Most people thought he was top tier last patch, and he's one of the only characters in the game who wasn't nerfed in some way. Elphelt has received some buffs to her combo structure to help her convert more consistently. 6H has increased damage. Pineberry has decreased sideways knockback and increased launch height along with decreased fall speed. This is really good, as a problem Elphelt previously had was that if she went for a mix-up after Pineberry and the opponent got hit by the first hit, her attack would miss and she wouldn't get a combo. Now she can react and convert with ease no matter where her mix-up succeeds. Elphelt's Rekka 1 can be dash cancelled on connect with the opponent. This lets her do dash karas similar to what Ram used to do, giving her a new and unique dynamic to her combo structure. Shotgun has increased damage and some knockback changes. It gets a decreased launch height, reduced horizontal knockback, but also gets a hard knockdown and wall bounce. Elphelt's command grab super is no longer her command grab super. It's been changed to a strike that she can combo into. The initial hit triggers wall break, and the bomb stays afterwards for a hard knockdown mix-up. It also explodes immediately if her gun attacks connect, meaning Elphelt can really apply some serious offensive pressure with this super now. Finally, Elphelt also got her Wild Assault changed, from blue to red. Elphelt's changes are majorly good. She struggled with combos, and now she not only has multiple new routes, but a consistent hard knockdown, meaning if you get hit by her, she'll loop you to death even mid-screen. This'll be a scary character to face this version. Abba got a small amount of changes, but a nerf to her strongest tool and buffs to Jealous Rage should keep her fair and afloat. Abba's auto dash block has been removed, meaning she'll actually need to commit to her forward movement. Abba's hop kick has increased recovery, meaning she won't be able to mash 2P to beat any character who isn't lucky enough to have a 4-frame. This is great for the game. It also launches lower on counter hit, but gives Abba hard knockdown instead of a combo. Donzai got increased damage and now launches on grounded hit for a combo. It got a bigger hitbox in the back, but that's just for jank anti-air hits. Abba's Jealous Rage super now deals increased damage on the final hit, and scales harder with her remaining Jealousy bar. This is nice, as the super was pretty hard to justify using, especially when it wouldn't kill. Should be better now. Abba's changes are a step in the right direction. The -1 hop kick absolutely had to go. It made so many matchups so lopsided for her, and the Donzai buff is pretty solid compensation. Good job. Slayer has had a chokehold on this game since its release, and this patch aims at reducing the power of his most ignorant tools and buffing other things. Slayer's backdash now has increased backwards movement speed at the start, but reduced movement speed at the end, making it more evasive. 6k has less recovery when feinted, making it a better surprise option when combined with throw. Far/first hit now knocks the opponent lower in the air and ground bounces. This is just to reduce inconsistency in a far/air hit. 2h has increased recovery. JD has increased active frames and a bigger hitbox. P-Mappa has increased recovery and increased knockback, meaning Slayer is less advantageous and spaced further away, weakening this as a pressure option. To allow for this move to still reward Slayer, it has higher launch height on counter hit. Pile Bunker deals more damage. Super Mappa Hunch actually lost its invuln during startup, getting it only during the middle portion. This means Slayer does not have an invulnerable super, only having Hand of Doom as a wake-up option. Slayer's nerfs are good, but honestly miss a little bit on what made him strong to me. 2h's extra recovery is nice, but the problem wasn't that it was too hard to whiff punish. The P-Mappa change is excellent, but did he need the compensation? Super Mappa Hunch nerf is pretty significant, but with his backdash change, he does still have wake-up options, now meterless, so I don't expect him to fall off too hard if I'm being honest. And finally, that's every single change in Guilty Gear Strive Season 4. As for my opinions, it's complicated. I think the direction they took with this patch is very understandable, and a lot of decisions I agree with. This patch heavily focused on nerfing bad eggs in characters' toolkits, and did pretty well with this, nerfing over-centralizing options to a character's toolkit like Rainwater, Capel, and Abba Hopkick, but the execution was very poor. Instead of bringing these tools down a little and bringing characters up to the level of that move, they just nuked these specials and called it a day for some, and ignored it for others. These new offensive options for characters like Goldlewis and Ramlethal are extremely questionable with the overall direction of the patch, getting new bad eggs that the patch seemed to be focused on removing, and on top of that, the patch is filled with a lot of bugs that make it hard to play. I think with a hotfix patch that fixes up some of the most egregious stuff introduced in this version, it could end up being a really solid version of the game, but as things are, it's rough around the edges. I do like the direction of Ram and Baiken's reworks, but the tuning is just so off. Why are we nerfing Axel, a bottom-tier zoner, and buffing Johnny, a top-tier zoner? Despite all that I just said, I think I'm more positive on this patch than a lot of other top players. It's got a lot of fun stuff, and did actively work towards making the game less toxic, but it did accidentally tip over a giant toxic vat in the middle of the cleanup process. We just need to wipe things up real quick, and Strive will be in a good state. This video took 5 days of editing, stopping only to eat and sleep. So if you appreciated the video, I humbly request you like the video and share it with your friends. This one took a lot of really hard effort to get out. Thank you to everybody who watched, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.